Many of us choose to relax after a hard day's work by listening to some of our favorite music. An upbeat and happy song can make a huge difference to the day, but in some cases, a closer look at the lyrics or backstory of that track can reveal a much darker meaning behind it, changing our opinion of the song forever. Number 10. The band Heart was the brainchild of sisters Ann and Nancy Wilson. They both serve as the group's frontwomen and vocalists, while Nancy is an accomplished guitarist who also provides backup vocals, keyboards, and mandolin. When asked how the siblings came up with the idea of starting a band, Ann stated that she and Nancy used to sing together when they were children, and at the ages of 8 and 13, they started playing guitar together. They started learning how to play popular songs from artists such as Paul Simon and the Beatles, and before long they realized they had a real talent for writing music, after which they decided to pursue careers in the music industry. In the 1960s, Ann met Steve Fossen and Roger Fisher while playing in a band called A Boy and His Dog. Fossen and Fisher were members of a band called White Heart, but after teaming up with Ann, they changed the name to Hocus Pocus. Ann was in a relationship with Fisher's brother, and shortly after the band's name was changed to Heart, she moved to Vancouver to be closer to him. This prompted the other members of the band to follow, and in 1974, Nancy decided to join as well. Nancy started dating Roger Fisher, and together the group started writing songs with a unique sound, blending folk music and hard rock. This set them apart from other bands at the time, along with the fact that the band was fronted by 2 women, something that was very unusual in rock music at that time. In 1975, they received word that they'd be opening for Rod Stewart at a concert in Montreal, and they impressed the crowd with their abilities. They were instantly thrust into the spotlight, since the media and rock music lovers wanted to know more about the sisters who were seen as pioneers for women in the rock music industry. They saw their share of detractors, who didn't enjoy the idea of a female-fronted band, but they ignored the critics and forged ahead, determined to prove them wrong by focusing on their musical talents. Their debut album, Dreamboat Annie, was released in 1976, and their song Magic Man reached number 9 on the Billboard Hot 100 chart. It's fair to say that they'd broken into the industry successfully, but still, they received nasty comments and unfair criticism, mostly from men in the industry who were unwilling to accept that 2 women could achieve success in this way. One such nasty comment ensured that Heart would be remembered forever when a male journalist tried to humiliate Nancy by making a wildly inappropriate joke referencing the album cover for Dreamboat Annie, on which Annie and Nancy were posed back-to-back with their shoulders exposed. The journalist asked Ann how her lover was doing, and thinking that he was referring to Rick Fisher, who she just started dating, she replied, "Oh yeah, Mike, he's great," to which he replied, No, I mean your sister." It was a sleazy and completely unsuccessful attempt to draw attention away from the band's music, but it backfired in a massive way. The comment lit a fire under the sisters, and they used that emotion to write the lyrics to their song Barracuda, which remains an iconic track even in modern times. They believe the song became as successful as it did because a lot of people deal with barracudas, nasty and malicious people, on a daily basis, and that the track helps them ignore these negative comments to rather focus on their own lives. Number 9. Not many people are aware that when someone is looking to purchase a guitar from a music instrument store, they're forbidden from playing the Led Zeppelin song Stairway to Heaven. While some believe this may be due to the song's supposed connection to the occult, it's merely because so many beginner guitarists have played the track while testing out guitars that store employees and other customers have grown sick of hearing it. But the song does remain the most requested track in radio history, and is still considered to be by most rock music aficionados as the standard against which all other rock songs are measured. The first few notes that are played when the song starts are among the most recognizable in rock history, and at just over 8 minutes long, it takes the listener on a journey through a world of uncertainty, where the protagonist is looking for some sense of meaning. While rock lyrics can be rather ambiguous at times, Stairway to Heaven's theme is made obvious by lyrics such as "There's still time to change the road you're on," and "Your stairway lies on the whispering wind." But in the early 1980s, certain individuals and groups started making shocking claims against the band, and this song in particular. It was a time when some religious groups started becoming obsessed with the idea that musicians and other influential figures were somehow linked to Satanism, and it's now remembered as the Satanic Panic. Even though the song was released a full decade earlier, a radio preacher called Michael Mills reported in 1991 that he discovered something alarming in one of the song's sections. He claimed that when the lyrics, "If there's a bustle in your hedgerow, don't be alarmed now," were played backward, a message could be heard that encouraged listeners to start worshiping the devil. Mills was quickly backed up by members of the Trinity Broadcasting Network, specifically Paul Crouch, as well as the Parents Music Resource Center. The act of hiding backward messages in songs became known as backmasking, and before long, people across the world were playing their vinyl records backward, looking for hidden instructions in music by other artists. Many people who were fans of Led Zeppelin at the time have since confessed that they stopped listening to their music altogether, and that they never bought any of their albums again for fear that the music would have a subliminal effect on them. In schools, children were warned of this deception and discouraged from listening to rock and heavy metal music. Other bands were also accused of backmasking, including the Beatles, Queen, Pink Floyd, the Eagles, Rolling Stones, and Jefferson Starship, to name just a few. But Led Zeppelin still went on to have a massively successful career, and is still considered to be one of the greatest rock bands to ever exist. Number 8. There's something endearing about a song that sounds happy and upbeat, thanks to the way the instruments are played, but which is then revealed to be much darker than expected when the lyrics are read. We're all familiar with the song American Pie, which was written by Don McLean in 1971. It features on the album of the same name, which reached number 1 on the Billboard 200 chart. But not many people know that the entire album is dedicated to fellow musician Buddy Holly. Since childhood, McLean has had a strange relationship with death, having experienced a very strange event when he was 15 years old. One day, he had what he describes as a premonition that his father was going to pass away, and upset, he ran to his grandmother to tell her what he had seen. She did, of course, not believe him and did her best to console him, but just a few days later, his father collapsed in front of him and passed away after suffering a sudden heart attack. The tragedy had a profound impact on his life, and for the next 2 years, he struggled to come to terms with the loss. At the age of 24, McLean wrote the song American Pie, and thanks to its strange and ambiguous lyrics, many theories have popped up in an attempt to explain what it's about. In the past, when he was asked about it, he'd simply state, "It means I'll never have to work again," alluding to the fact that the song was hugely successful, and hence made him a very rich man. But he has admitted that it's a biographical song, and that the opening of the song is either about the passing of his father or the plane crash that ended Buddy Holly's life on the 3rd of February, 1959. Holly was his musical idol when he was growing up, and he was devastated at hearing the news that Holly had passed away, along with Richie Valens and J.P. Richardson, known as the Big Bopper. It's also believed that the gesture that's mentioned in the song may refer to Bob Dylan, who'd become more popular than Elvis Presley, who was considered the king of rock and roll at the time. McLean has always remained tight-lipped about the meaning of the song, preferring to let people make of it what they will. But in a documentary called The Day the Music Died, he finally revealed what it was inspired by. He confirmed that the first verse is about the tragedy of losing Holly, but added that another part is about being at school and seeing all the children going about their lives happily, while he was feeling lonely and depressed after losing his father. Next, he added that the jester in the song does not refer to Bob Dylan, and that the king who's wearing a thorny crown isn't Elvis but Jesus Christ. But he did confirm that the Lenin, who's mentioned in the song, is a reference to both John Lennon and Vladimir Lenin, who was the first head of the Soviet government. The rest of the song alludes to the Vietnam War and the assassinations of John F. Kennedy and his brother Robert in the 1960s. It's fair to say that by the time McLean penned this song, he'd grown disillusioned with life, and the lyrics perfectly illustrate that point. Number 7. When Green Day first burst onto the music scene in 1994 with the release of their debut album Dookie, their then unique sound took the world by storm as they infused punk with a pop sound, and before long they became hugely popular. The band's frontman, Billy Joe Armstrong, met bass player Michael Ryan Pritchard, also known as Mike Dirt, while they were still in grade school in California. They were both fans of punk bands such as the Ramones and the Dead Kennedys, and in 1987, they teamed up with drummer Sean Hughes to start a band called Sweet Children. Hughes was eventually replaced by Al Sabranti, and very quickly they became well known in the San Francisco Bay Area, just like so many bands before them. They released an album called 39 Smooth, and shortly after, Sabranti was replaced by Tré Cool. When Dookie was released in 1994, the band became a sensation, and they won a Grammy Award for the Best Alternative Music Performance, with more than 15 million copies of their debut album sold to date. But they struggled to sell their next two albums, Insomniac and Nimrod, but bounced back with their 2000 release Warning. This was followed by a 4-year hiatus before the release of the next album, American Idiot, in 2004. They had opted for a more political approach this time around, and audiences responded positively. They won another Grammy in 2005, and the song Boulevard of Broken Dreams won another the following year for Record of the Year. While that may have been the most recognized song on the album, die-hard Green Day fans consider another, Wake Me Up When September Ends, to be one of the best the band has ever released, but it hides a dark message that many people aren't aware of. By this time, the band members had lived through tragedies of their own, and their lyricist, Armstrong, was no exception. American Idiot was created as a concept album that's told through the eyes of a suburban Jesus who struggles with views such as identity and whether the American dream is all it's cracked up to be. Wake Me Up When September Ends is one of the darker tracks on the album, but its meaning escaped many fans when it was first released. It was used in many different contexts, such as advocating for peace in war-torn countries, and as a tribute to those who lived through the horrors of Hurricane Katrina. But in reality, the song has a much more personal connection to Armstrong. His father passed away on the 10th of September 1982, and it understandably had a massive impact on his life. After the funeral, he ran home, locked himself in his room, and refused to come out. When his mother knocked on the door to ask if he was okay, he said, "Wake me up when September ends," and shortly after he wrote the lyrics to the song that's become one of Green Day's signature tracks. Number 6. Being a famous musician may seem like the perfect job to most of us, and while it certainly beats sitting at a desk all day, it also has its drawbacks. Musicians who make it in the industry make a lot of money and gain a lot of admiration, but sometimes that admiration can go too far, and it results in a very scary and potentially dangerous situation. This is a lesson that Gwen Stefani, the frontwoman of the band No Doubt, learned after the band became a success, and one song that she wrote may seem upbeat, but centers on this experience and serves as a warning to others. When No Doubt started releasing music in the early 90s, many people didn't know what to make of their sound, since they blended ska with new wave pop, and it was only when they released their third album, Tragic Kingdom, in 1995, that they started seeing elevated album sales and mainstream success. But the band had humble beginnings as Stefani and her brother Eric founded the group while they were still in their teenage years in 1986. Back then, they were called Applecore, and while performing a show with their friend John Spence, they were spotted by bassist Tony Kanal, and he soon became the fourth member, and he and Stefani would become romantically involved for the next 7 years. When Spence passed away the next year, the band took a hiatus, but got back together as they believed Spence would have wanted them to continue writing music. Tom DeMont then joined, and the next year, Adrian Young became the drummer. Their first self-titled album was released in 1992, and 3 years later, they released the Beacon Street Collection. It saw more success than their debut release, but they still hadn't achieved the level of fame that Tragic Kingdom would bring later that same year. Tragic Kingdom made it onto the charts, and to date, it's sold millions of copies worldwide, largely thanks to the single Don't Speak, and its accompanying music video that revealed Stefani's funky fashion style. Stefani has since embarked on a massively successful solo career, but for many people, she'll always be remembered as the frontwoman of No Doubt, who helped bring a strange and exciting new sound to the music industry. One of the songs on Tragic Kingdom that's taken people by surprise is the track Spiderwebs, Once again, this is one of those songs that seemed lighthearted and fun upon first listen, but the lyrics reveal that this is not the case. The true meaning of the track is revealed in the very first verse when she sings, "You think that we connect, that the chemistry's correct. Your words walk right through my ears, presuming I like what I hear." It immediately becomes clear that this is not a happy-go-lucky song, but a narrative that deals with a stalker who's unwilling to take no for an answer, since they've become delusional to the point where they no longer acknowledge the other person's pleas to leave them alone. These lyrics were written from a personal experience that Stefani had when a fan became obsessed with her and became convinced that she loved them back, despite being told on several occasions that it wasn't true. She likens the experience to being a bug caught in a spider web with no way of escaping, despite desperately needing to escape the terrifying situation that she found herself in. Number 5. For Whom the Bell Tolls may not be Metallica's most docile track, but compared to some of their other music that was released at the time, it has a much slower tempo to begin with, and hence many people who had never read the lyrics didn't understand that it was about a very dark subject. Metallica is the best-selling metal band of all time, and it's considered by many to be the greatest rock band that's ever existed. To date, they've sold more than 163 million albums worldwide, and it's fair to say they'll go down in history as giants in their genre. They're considered the creators of the speed metal genre, along with Slayer and Anthrax, but have also been hailed as one of the most influential bands ever in the thrash metal genre, even though their sound has become progressively less aggressive as the decades have gone by. The band was formed in 1981 by frontman and rhythm guitarist James Hetfield and drummer Lars Ulrich. Their first album was released in 1983, but when their second album, Ride the Lightning, was released the following year, they really started making waves in the metal scene. Many Metallica fans cite this as their favorite album, since it was the first time that Hetfield tackled social and political issues in his lyrics, and combined with the breakneck speed of most of the songs on the release, it set the band on a path of success from which there was no return. But the group did encounter a major setback in 1986 when they were on tour in Sweden, promoting their album Master of Puppets. While on the road in their tour bus, the vehicle hit a patch of ice, skidded and overturned, ending the life of bassist Cliff Burton, who was Hetfield's best friend. The remaining members were convinced that this was the end of the band, but after a short break, they recruited Jason Newsted as a replacement, and while the relationship between him and Hetfield was contentious, they continued onwards to unthinkable amounts of success. Newsted first appeared on the And Justice for All album, and had to contend with his bass being turned down at the request of Hetfield and Ulrich, and as a result, his instrument is barely audible on the songs that are included on that album. Nevertheless, the release of their self-titled album, better known as the Black Album, saw them reach the upper levels of fame, largely thanks to the fact that they adopted a more mainstream metal sound, and included a ballad called Nothing Else Matters, which they'd never done before. This caused many fans to abandon the band, as they longed for their heavier songs, such as those found on the Ride the Lightning release, and one song from that album has surprised many people when they learn of its true meaning. For Whom the Bell Tolls is a phrase that was first coined by Ernest Hemingway in his novel of the same name. Metallica used this as the title for one of their songs, and while the accompanying music is by no means easy listening, the lyrics reveal that it's far darker than casual fans imagined. Those who've read the Hemingway novel will recognize the narrative of the song, which follows 5 soldiers who decide to make a stand against their fascist enemies. They know that their goal is futile, and that they'll likely not live to see another sunrise, but they stand firm nevertheless, and in the end all lose their lives despite fighting to the best of their abilities, highlighting what was, in Hetfield's mind at the time, the futility of war and life. Number 4. Most artists and bands choose a specific genre of music and produce music in that genre for the rest of their careers. But this is not the case with Bonnie Raitt. She's known for a diverse style that includes country, rock, blues, and rhythm and blues. Raitt was raised as a Quaker in Los Angeles, but was no stranger to the performing arts, as her father John was a Broadway musical star who made his name playing the role of Bigelow in the play Carousel and Curly in the original cast of Oklahoma. Bonnie made her start in the music industry after she dropped out of Radcliffe College in Cambridge and decided to focus on writing songs. She'd learned to play the slide guitar, and before long had released 3 studio albums, all of which followed the typical blues style. It wasn't until the early 70s that she started incorporating some pop elements into her songs, and this resulted in her first hit single, a cover of Del Shannon's song Runaway. She was very open about her political views, and is the co-founder of a group called Musicians United for Safe Energy. Unfortunately, with success came some issues, and in the 1980s, Bonnie started struggling with alcoholism. Her career declined until 1990, when she released the album Nick of Time, which earned her a Grammy Award for Best Female Rock Vocal Performance. The following year, her success only continued when she released her 11th studio album, Luck of the Draw, which included a song called I Can't Make You Love Me. It reached number 18 on the charts in the US and saw similar success in many other countries, including New Zealand, Canada, the Netherlands, and Australia. The piano parts on the song were provided by another famous musician, Bruce Hornsby, and it was considered a classic song despite never breaking into the top 10 of the charts. It was written by Mike Reed and Alan Shamblin, who've collaborated with many other famous musicians, including Willie Nelson, Wyona Judd, Mike Reed, and Dolly Parton. On the first listen, it sounds like a casual love song, but the deeper meaning behind the track is far sadder, since it deals with the harsh reality of dealing with unrequited love, and the idea for the track came from an unexpected source. At the time, Shamblin and Reed were living in Nashville, and had already written songs for other famous country musicians. They both made a name for themselves in the industry, as several of their songs had reached the country charts. They met each other at the Austin City Limits Music Festival, and they quickly became friends. After working together for about a year, they were approached and asked to write I Can't Make You Love Me, which was slated to become a Bonnie Raitt song. The idea for the song came to Reed when he was reading a Nashville newspaper one day. He read an article about a man who was living under a bridge in downtown Nashville. His wife found out that he was living on the streets and tracked him down. But rather than help him, she took him to court and filed for a divorce, and when all was said and done, he was quoted as saying, "You know, you just can't make a woman love you." The phrase perfectly summed up what it's like to love someone who doesn't reciprocate those feelings, and it was decided that Raitt should perform the track, which was a very good decision. Number 3. Alanis Morissette needs no introduction to most pop and alternative rock fans, since she gained a massive fan base after the release of her debut album Jagged Little Pill in 1995. Since then, her career has flourished, and she continues to tour to this day. Her interest in music started at an early age, when she started taking piano lessons at the age of 6. She started writing her own songs when she was 9, and the next year she started appearing on the Nickelodeon TV show, You Can't Do That on Television. She saved the money that she made from those appearances to cut her first song, and by the age of 14, she'd released 2 dance pop albums entitled Alanis and Now Is the Time, resulting in her being awarded the Juno Award for the Most Promising Female Vocalist of the Year. But her teenage music career started waning, and after graduating from high school, she started focusing on more serious music. She relocated to Los Angeles, where she started working with songwriter-producer Glenn Ballard. She was signed to the Maverick record label, which at the time was a joint venture between the Warner Music Group, Guy Oseary, and Madonna. The song You Ought to Know became an instant hit as soon as the album was released. It told the story of a woman who falls in love with a man, and he tells her that he'll love her until she passes away. But he then leaves her for someone else, breaking her heart and turning her world upside down. It's widely believed that the lyrics are about comedian Dave Collier, with whom she was in a relationship with from 92 to 94. The album saw a lot of success, selling 16 million copies in the US alone. It also resulted in Morissette winning 4 Grammy Awards for Album of the Year, Best Rock Album, Best Rock Song, and Best Female Vocal Performance. You Ought to Know was by far the most popular song on the album, but it also contains another track that seems almost whimsical at first, but hides a darker meaning. The track You Learn deals with the harsh reality of life and the obstacles that we encounter every day. And while most of us learn from these issues and mistakes, the lesson doesn't void the feelings of failure and betrayal that we all go through. The lyrics are derived from personal experiences that Morissette lived through, many of which were unpleasant and scary. When she was signed to the Maverick record label, she was scheduled to meet Madonna, but the night before that happened, she was walking through the streets of Los Angeles with her backpack on her back. It contained the music and lyrics for You Oughta Know, and so she guarded it closely. She was on her way to a store to buy running shoes when she was approached by a man with a firearm who demanded that she hand over all her possessions. She lay down on her backpack before handing over her purse and wallet, and luckily the man was too impatient to ask for the backpack, which, if stolen, would have been a major setback. But this wasn't the last time that she'd be the victim of a robbery. In 2017, she was on vacation in Brentwood, California, when robbers broke into her home and stole around $2 million worth of jewelry. Luckily, she wasn't at home at the time, and hence never saw the burglars. Number 2. No one who's a fan of the Beach Boys will ever make the claim that they're a dark band, since most of their songs have a lighthearted feel and cover subjects such as surfing, romance, and cars, as well as life in Southern California. As an example, their first album, which was released in 1961, was entitled Surfin' Safari and contained their first single, Surfin'. Their sound was considered by many to be unpolished, but nevertheless the band soon gained a large fan base. Since then, they've been associated with sun, surf, and fun, but not many people know that the Beach Boys have a strange and slightly unnerving connection to one of the most famous serial killers of all time, Charles Manson. Manson met the band's drummer, Dennis Wilson, in 1968, when Wilson picked up 2 female hitchhikers in San Francisco and dropped them off at the place they were staying, which happened to be the ranch where Manson and the rest of his cult members were living. The 2 women were part of Manson's so-called family that he had created, and according to some of the cult members, Manson was able to captivate Wilson, which made him appear as even more of an authority figure in their eyes. The 2 men immediately got along, and Wilson decided to stay at the ranch for a while that day. He and Manson listened to music, partook in illegal substances, and talked for a few hours, during which Manson also introduced Wilson to some of the songs that he had written. Just a few days after their initial meeting, the cult moved into Wilson's house, where illegal substances were bountiful, and by all accounts, they seemed to enjoy each other's company. Wilson provided them with food and even took some of the members to see a doctor. As their friendship grew, Wilson agreed to let Manson record a few of his songs at his studio, but Manson and one of the producers got into a heated argument, and he produced a sharpened blade, as if out of nowhere, which brought the friendship to an abrupt end. The family was ordered to leave the house, but Manson and Wilson would still see each other on occasion. But Wilson had taken a liking to one of the songs, Cease to Exist, which was a blues-style song. He convinced Manson to let the Beach Boys record it, and he agreed on condition that it would not be altered in any way. He received some money and a motorcycle for writing the track, but the band decided to go against his wishes and turned it into a pop-style song. Upon finding out about this, Manson became enraged, and a few days later, Wilson received a single piece of ammunition that was delivered to his house. He then reportedly told Wilson, "Every time you look at it, I want you to think how nice it is that your kids are still safe." This elicited a violent response from Wilson, who grabbed Manson by the head and threw him to the ground before assaulting him. It became clear that Wilson would not be intimidated, though it isn't known whether he changed that opinion after learning of Manson's crimes the following year. Number 1. Bruce Springsteen was born in Freehold, New Jersey in 1949. He and his 2 siblings were raised as Catholics, but he always had a rebellious nature, and before long he started becoming interested in rock music. As an adult, he performed with several bar bands, but decided that he wanted to be a solo musician. He auditioned for John Hammond Sr., a talent scout, who was immediately impressed by his singing and guitar playing. He was signed to Columbia Records, and in 1973, he released 2 albums titled Greetings from Asbury Park, New Jersey, and The Wild, the Innocent, and the E Street Shuffle. They were heavily influenced by folk rock, blues, and soul, and his ability to belt out fast-paced songs before returning to a calmer, more melodic tone set him apart from other similar artists. 1975 saw the release of his 3rd album, Born to Run, which had a more rock and roll feel, since it was inspired by artists such as Roy Orbison. It was an instant hit with audiences, and in the same week that it was released, Springsteen made it onto the covers of Time and Newsweek magazines. He toured extensively for the following 3 years before releasing Darkness on the Edge of Town in 1978. He saw international success for the first time with the single Hungry Heart, which was released in 1980. But he also had a few run-ins with the record label's marketing and public relation departments, as he often refused to cooperate with their ideas. His live shows had become legendary, as some performances lasted as long as 4 hours, and Springsteen's ability to interact with his fellow musicians and the crowd had endeared him to a lot of people, and his fan base expanded at a rapid rate. But he would only become a household name in 1984, when he released the famous album Born in the USA. 7 of the tracks on that album became hit singles, and Springsteen was quickly hailed as one of the foremost singer-songwriters of his generation. To this day, the album's title track remains his most recognizable and played song. But not everyone is aware of the true message behind the lyrics. It's often played at 4th of July celebrations, football matches, and is even referenced by Ronald Reagan during one of his 1984 presidential campaign speeches. Even in modern times, many people, including some of Springsteen's fans, believe that the song is about the privilege to be born in the USA. And it's a patriotic anthem that highlights the opportunities available to everyone living in the country. But this simply isn't true. The fact is that it has a far more depressing message that has escaped a lot of listeners over the years. It tells the tale of a small-town man who's conscripted into the military, after which he's sent to fight in the Vietnam War. There, he witnessed the horrors of war, but he manages to survive and eventually makes it back home. Once there, he realizes that he has no future, and that the government has no further use for him. He's unable to find work, and he seeks help from his local Veterans Affairs office, but he's sent away empty-handed, bringing to light the harsh realities that war veterans faced upon returning home after fighting against the Viet Cong. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But my name is Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.